In this third and final part of Mix Wars #1, I'm going to be going over mastering automation. And in this case, I'm just using a simple volume automation. You could also make, I don't know, for example, courses brighter. You could make a bridge or intro very lo-fi sounding just to make it sound a little bit different from everything else. There's so many things you can do during mastering to improve the just flow of your song, to make it, have that last professional polish added before listeners hear it. And that's what this video is all about. Like I said, I just did simple volume automation, but it really adds that last element to the master. And the final part of the video after that, I will be comparing my mix to Vitaly Justice's and giving my positive opinion about his mix. And that's about it. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'd like to hear your opinion on the mix differences, and also if you have any other questions about maybe something I did with the mix that I didn't answer in the other videos, let me know below. Thanks. I don't think I've ever talked about this topic on Real Home Recording before, but it's a very important one because it's something that takes your amateur sounding mix to the next level. It's something that is done on, I would say, virtually every professional level mix. And you can either do it when you're mixing, or I prefer to do it when I'm mastering, just for the simple fact that I don't have like 50 different plugins going at once, because once you get to that point in the project, things can tend to crash. So basically what I did is took off the Ozone 9 Maximizer limiter, and I still had a good amount of headroom. As you can see, this is the full waveform. And if I make it a little bit bigger, so if you look at the peaks on the waveforms, they don't ever go to the maximum. I think that's about 6 decibels I had of headroom. Now, you don't need that necessarily with floating point files, which is what this is. And I export with floating point files so that I don't lose any quality. But even with fixed rate, it would still be good. So the point of automation, and if you don't know what automation is, basically when you have a mix going, your parameters, your controls are fixed in one spot throughout the entire mix. Automation allows us to do this automatically, except you have to set the settings and then it does it automatically. Automation is the key to professional level mixes. So I want to show you guys pretty much how I did this. I went through the song, and as you can see, I have these markers at the top. I press M as the song's playing and then adjust them back. And the idea is that I'm building these somewhat subtle volume automations throughout the song, so it follows the song's energy pattern, we'll call it. So for the verses, we have our standard 0 decibels, so no change from the regular mix level. And then during our courses, we have it going, actually the final course I should show you has the biggest volume increase right here. I have it at 2.75 decibels. Now, I kind of did that so you can hear it better. Some engineers don't want to go past 2 decibels, but really, if it sounds good, it is good. And the idea is that you're not going from one volume to another. There's going to be a gradual buildup usually, even if it's a little smaller than this. And then there's going to be a slowdown back to 0 as the energy goes with the mix, back up. Not as loud as the other one, but still a difference. And these little volume rides, as you can see, this one I did 1.88 decibels. And down here, again, 0. This is the first verse, I believe, or leading up to it. And then see, very gradual volume riding. And you can either do this with the mouse, which I'll show you in a few minutes, or you can do it while the song's playing. And if you have a control surface, or in my case, I have the Audient ID14, which has a volume knob that acts as an automation fader. Now, I can only do it for one control at a time, but hey, that's good enough. I can pay attention and figure out what I want to do. Now you can get a lot more complex than just volume rides. While you're mixing, you can change EQ, you can change reverb, you can change delay, you can change whatever you can automate can be changed. The idea of automation is that you're making a mix sound more interesting because otherwise it sounds flat. And with these subtle volume rides, your ear is like, something's going on. And the brain obviously is a part of the ear. So it keeps your listeners' interest to do automation. And I know it takes a long time to get a mix sounding good. And once you've got to that point, you just want to say, I'm finished. But you shouldn't be finished. Automation is the key to great mixes. You can have a good mix and have everything be flat, and I'll still be like, yeah, that was good. But man, to take it to that next level, to make a good mix into a great mix, automation is key. Even if it doesn't sound perfect, like this song is not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but doing volume automation helped it. So as you can see, here, I'll just play this part so you can hear it at 0 and then leading up to course number 1 or 2. I don't really know. I'm going to call this course 2. Course 1 that had vocals.
Should like you seem to think that you are aware that.
And when I picked it, it was obvious that as soon as a synth started or there was a change in the guitar rhythm pattern or the lead or whatever, as soon as that hit, I was like, add the node. That's what this little dot's called, a node. I sometimes call them keyframes because that's what they're called in video, but node, and there's another name I can't think of, but we will just call it a node point. So here, sorry, I interrupted the playback. I'll let it play through the whole course leading up to verse 2.
I don't want to be anything like you. Access denied. We won't let anybody through, 'cause there's enough already in the room.
And another word I want to use when it comes to automation is you're providing contrast. And in art, contrast keeps the interest of the ear, the interest of the eye. I talk about this, when it comes to video production. It's like if this mix or this master didn't have automation, it's like watching somebody sit there and talk without B-roll. The automation is the B-roll, the clips that you see, the video footage or the photos that go over your A-roll, your person, your talking head. So this is that last piece of production quality that is essential if you want your music to be taken seriously. So one thing I should note, during the course, I could have flatlined it, but it's a gradual build up to, I believe, the last lyric. So let me play that one more time and pay attention to where this note is while the playback bar is going.
Access denied. We won't let anybody through, 'cause there's enough already in the room.
Yeah, so I just let it be flat for a few seconds, and then even though the arrangement has its own automation going on, meaning that less instruments are being involved, I still need to get back to that 0 volume level anyway. So this is just the most natural slope, we'll call it. And then this little course here needed another volume build up You know, I didn't go as high as the chorus, but yeah, let's check that out.
Now I'm big, I can walk all over you. I seen you smoking cigarettes.
So again, it's always about the subtleties that if they're not there, it doesn't provide that interest, that contrast, and it just makes for boring sounding recorded music, you know? So this last chorus, which I'm not going to play, but you can see I built the track up to its loudest volume. And see, this is exactly why I absolutely despise hyper-compressed music. Because see, let me show you this on Ozone 9. So this last chorus, right? And I'll mute it. Well, I don't know if I can show you the track while it's muted. We'll see. Hold on. Yeah, I can. Okay. So watch the brick wall limiter, all right? Watch where the levels are going. Watch how much gain reduction's happening while this last chorus is playing. And yeah, there was a quick little thing. There's a reason I had to do that, but yeah. So even at my loudest setting, it was still only shaving a tiny bit of peaks off. And this is how music used to be mastered back in the day. It was not usual for hypercompression, and hypercompression has taken away that contrast. Now you're still going to get a little bit of contrast between the verses and the choruses, but not the same thing. And you always want to keep it within about 3 decibels plus or minus. You don't want to be too quiet. You don't want to have too much volume change because that's bad too. But you just want to have that subtle amount. And when you have hypercompression, you can't get that subtlety. And in fact, the choruses sound quieter than the verses because of hypercompression. It's ridiculous. So anyway, let me show you one other mastering trick, or one other, we'll call it mix automation trick. And that is, during the courses, you can up the EQ just a tiny bit. Again, a tiny bit, subtle. And in this case, I'm going to use a Soundtech 432 mastering equalizer emulation. I like to do somewhere between 2 kilohertz to 8 kilohertz. Or, in the case of a shelving boost, you can do this, and you only want to do 0.5 decibels, maybe 1 decibel at the maximum. And the idea is that you're only going to do it at the courses, because that's where you want your stuff to be brighter. And the other trick, if you have been looking at this plugin, I have it set to the mid-side setting, or the sum and difference setting, on S for sides, so that only the sides of the mix, so the far left, the far right, nothing that's sum that you could, have mono, so that only those are brighter. And it just makes the mix brighter. It doesn't add harshness to your vocal. It just works. So let's try it, and I'm going to show you how to do it. So in Reaper, you click this button right here. It's called envelope. All right. ENV. And in this case, I only really need the bypass, and there's 2 bypasses. The final bypass is actually Reaper's bypass. I don't want that. I want the built-in plug-in bypass, because then we can avoid any issues with clicking and popping. And then the idea of this is down here underneath the volume automation, we have our bypass. And I'm going to find the courses by listening to the song. And when those courses hit, this little bit of automation will come in, or this little bit of high-end boosting on the sides will come in. Let me make sure I had that setting properly. And for this, I'm going to do a 6 or 8 kilohertz. Let's just do 7. We'll do a 7 kilohertz boost by 1 decibel so it's obvious. Another trick you can do, if for some reason you don't want to make your mix sound drastically different, you could also automate it so that at the verses, it's 0.5 or 1 decibels duller. So you're cutting either a shelf or you're cutting at 2 to 8 kilohertz. That way you have a 1 decibel boost without affecting the original mix. And as far as the Q or the bandwidth factor, we'll set that to the second from the highest. So we're not just going to be boosting around 7, we're also going to be getting 6 and 8 as well. Maybe a little bit of 5, maybe a little bit of 9 kilohertz as well. Again, just on the sides. And in Reaper, the way to add a node point is to hold Control, and you see how it switches to this vertical arrow? And then you just click it. That adds the point. And in the case of this, because it's a bypass, so it's either on or off, there's no in between, you add another node point. And I'm having issues with my mouse because I have a wireless mouse and keyboard, and for some reason I'm getting interference issues. So if you see me struggling, that's why. I'm going to undo this because that's not where I want my node point. I need to actually hear at what point the courses start. So I'm just going to do that, and I'll be back after I add my node points. Or actually, here, just watch me. So I'm going to add it right when the lead guitar part starts. And the reason you want to do that is if you do it when something else changes, it kind of hides any abrupt change. Which, by the way, I technically could, because I'm using a EQ band parameter, instead of bypassing this, I could just up it using the EQ. So let me do that instead, so that's a little bit more smooth than a bypass disable. So I just need to find that parameter. So that is our high peak gain control. And if you watch this is where you can really see what I'm talking about. So right now it's at whatever setting I had it, which was 0. And when I add my node, it stays at, oh, see, I'm having mouse issues. This is driving me nuts. I'm going to get rid of my wireless keyboard probably, and because I just can't stand not being able to control properly. Anyway, that's a whole other video. Let me add the node at the right point, which is the start of the lead guitar. So that's that. And then I'm going to find where the lead part really takes off. This is a little bit easier when I'm in ASIO mode because it synchronizes a little bit better, but I have to use wave out when I'm doing screen captures. So it starts for real right around here. You have to be very careful when you're doing this, especially with a broken mouse, because it will change your track. I have to redo that node now. I control Z'd for an undo, and I'm just going to add this back in. Okay, and another thing you want to do is find where your track no longer needs to be bright, which will be the end of this lead part. And again, we're going to do a gradual roll off. And actually, our volume automation already guides us a little bit, so we'll do it right here. We'll just match the volume automation node. And see where it actually ends. Okay, right there is perfect. And our last step for this section is to grab this. And by the way, if your automation tracks are not wide, if they're like this, by default, they're like this wide. Make that sucker bigger so it's easier to set this. So watch my control. I'm going to put my playback right here. Watch my control. And it's hard to do. There we go. So watch this control right here. And I'm going to change it a lot so you can really see it. That's not what I want. I want, what did I say, 1 decibel. And let's listen to what it did. And just for fun, let me boost it a lot. Yeah, you don't want that. If you think it's too subtle, you can boost it a little bit higher to 1.5 or 2 decibels. I wouldn't really go any higher than that because then at that point you're really going to be changing your mix. Let's just do 2 for fun. Again, watch the knob. What I'm doing is I'm putting my mouse arrow over this line that I created with the 4 node points. All right, you should definitely hear the difference now. So back in the day, before automation on large format mixing consoles existed, people would actually stand around the large mixing board and tweak these controls while the song was being mixed down to tape. Yes, that is how it was done many decades ago. Luckily, we don't have to do that anymore. But yeah, that was the old Stone Age, right? So I would just go through, find the different parts that, in your opinion, this is all subjective. Again, this is where we get a little bit creative, and we go, okay, this is where this chorus is. You usually want to do the brighter stuff for the chorus. You really don't want to do it for the verses. It's just, you want your stuff to sound bigger and bolder when that chorus hits, and it won't sound big and bold if your verses are already big and bold. You know what I'm saying? But if you're weird, guess what? You can make your choruses sound duller and then your verses sound brighter if that's really what your intention is. But standard rule is brighter choruses, louder choruses, and that's it. So I'm going to go through this and make the choruses brighter. And then what I'm going to do for the final part of this video is compare mine to Vitaly Justice's. So stay tuned. This is going to take me about 10 to 15 minutes, but you're going to see it in an instant. And here are all my mastering equalizer automation nodes. All in the red. I even peaked up to 2 decibels for that final crescendo. All right, and the nice thing about the nodes is that you don't have to put your points all between these lines. You know, like you don't have to click, 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 click. It does something called interpolation so that the control will automatically move as this is playing. You'll see right now. I'll take it from the highest point down to the outro. And that's it for mastering or mixing automation. For this final video, I am going to be playing Vitaly Justice's mix of Purple Hat Mob's Access Denied single. And right after that's going to be my mix. After that, I'm going to leave some positive comments for my opponent. And while I'm thinking about it, I did have to use a brick wall limiter because of clipping issues on one of these tracks. So I'm going to just have this. This is the only other plugin I have, just so that it doesn't clip the screen capture software recording. So let's get started. You know what? I'm going to add a loudness plugin to this. Ulean loudness meter, because I think people need to understand our mixes and masters, whatever you want to call them, are indeed the same level where they should have been at -15 LUFS under the EBU R128 standard.
Now you're big and you can just do anything that you want. Walk around and lay your eyes on anything that you want. I killed a beast so strong and so should like you seem to think that you are. Will that come back to bite
Before mine plays, I'll comment and just say I think that Vitaly did a really good job on the snare drum and also the drums blending with the guitars as far as the lead and the rhythm guitars. And I'll let you guys, I don't want to be that guy and, and negatively criticize my own opponent. So I will leave any feedback for him, because I know that it'll help him in his future mixes if you guys leave polite, constructive critiques, positive and negative. All right? So as far as loudness, I'm going to say that he definitely has me beat on the loudness. This meter, I don't know how he was able to trick it, but he was able to trick it, and my mix definitely does not sound as loud as his. So on to mine.
Now you're big and you can just do anything that you want. Walk around and lay your eyes on anything that you want. I'd kill to be so strong and so should, like you seem to think that you are. Will that come back to bite you? Can't turn back now. All pride aside, I don't want to be anything like you. Access denied, we won't let anybody through, 'cause there's enough already in the room. Now I'm big, I can walk all over you. I've seen you smoking cigs and sinking in what's real. All pride aside, don't wanna be anything like you. denied. We won't let anybody through, so you should go find something else to do. All pride aside, access denied. Access denied. Yeah.
And that is it for Mix War #1. Again, I want to thank Vitaly Justice of Red Barn Productions and Firestorm Records for participating. And yeah, the next one will maybe be in December. We'll see. Thanks for watching, everybody. This has been Adam for RealHomeRecording.com. I forgot to show you the synth prep session because, as you can see, this is enough tracks for its own little mini mix. These are all the synthesizer tracks that were recorded, and I decided to break them down into 3 tracks so that they took up less space in the mix. So just to go quickly through this, I have VCC on track 1, track 2's VTM for saturation and VCC. See, I'm not doing EQ unless I absolutely need to. Mix prep is not about, yes, EQ just for the sake of EQing. If something already sounds okay, I'm just going to put some saturation plugins and call it a day. Track 3, we got VCC again. And track 4, basically the same thing as before. Sometimes I use VTM, sometimes I don't. It just kind of depends on my mood, I guess. Now here I did need some EQ, so I used Navy 2. And let's see why. Let's turn Navy off. I guess I'll keep the other 2 on. Versus. And this one, before and after. Okay, so I think I primarily did it for this track, but the other one didn't sound too bad either. This one just sounds dull. Listen again. Versus. Yeah, that was definitely a good EQ decision, in my opinion. On to track 6. Let me unsolo this, and there we go. Okay, I used Navy again. Once again, a high shelf boost into VTM and into VCC. By the way, if you forgot what these 2 plugins are, this one is a tape machine tape emulation device, and then this is a simulation of a line input into a large format mixing console. What does that do? When you mix, the tracks tend to be a little bit more separated sounding, in my opinion. With VTM, it gives slight compression, it reduces harsh frequencies a little bit, and overall, I think it just makes a mix sound a little bit bigger, more professional. Maybe it's a placebo effect, but I've been using this on my mixes for a very long time, and I don't want to mix without it. So I'll just do another before and after with Navy. So yeah, just making it a little bit more brighter, present, whatever you want to call it. Not as lo-fi sounding. Okay, so these tracks look like they just had the same thing as well. VTM, VCC, VTM, VCC. A little boring, but, you know, adding all these plugins together when it comes to percentage points, even if they're only taking up, let's say, 0.5% or, you know, 0.3%, well, if you add that up over 12 tracks, that's about, what, 2 or 3 CPU that you can save? I think with this project, I saved like 17%, and that was mainly from using the Navy plugins. Okay, and I also use Big Seal. In this case, I took advantage of the Airband, which I really like on this channel strip plugin. And that's going into VTM and VCC. Which I should mention the settings I'm using. So these settings over here affect the sound because it's like selecting a different tape machine right here. It's selecting a different tape speed. So the lower one has more of a low end bump, and it doesn't sound as high fidelity. So it like rolls off the high end a little bit more, and then 30 inches per second, which is what 30 IPS stands for. And then finally, our tape type, I think this one has maybe the most significant change besides the tape machine itself. The tape formula, the FG9 is more clearer. It's very digital-like. And FG456 is more of the vintage tape sound that you might be used to. And the vintage tape sound is useful for things that you don't want to sound harsh. That's really the best way to put it. So I like using the different tape types depending on which track I'm using, which is something that you can't do in real life because it's just too unwieldy. And then finally, VCC going into a SSL 4000G console. Somebody had mentioned, man, you use a lot of plugins, and my response to that is not really. If you think about it, I'm using, this would be an EQ on a console, right? And this would be a tape machine. So 24 tracks, 16 tracks, what have you. A tape machine is something that was used back then and still used today, but not as much. So, 16 tracks, 24 tracks, 48 tracks, people are using tape machines. And then this one, again, not another plugin. It's going into a line input on a mixing console, which is what you're going to do in real life if this was real life and not a DAW. So let's see. I don't know what track I was on. Was it this one? Oh, I should have did a before and after so you could hear it. Hold on. I'll just play the last track and disable Big Seal. Compare that to so really it's not until this middle part where you can hear a difference, a big difference. Versus so the air band is very similar to a high shelf boost, but I think it has a less harsh sound to it. And it's that Focusrite air selection. If you ever used like a Claret or a Scarlett audio interface, it's built into that. I like the way the air band sounds. And our final track, once again, Big Seal. But this time it looks like I cut a harsh range. I think this is the only EQ I used to cut. So let's do a before and after. Soloed. Okay, yeah, so I just reduced a harsh sounding frequency, and that was about it. Let's see what I used on the mix bus. Okay, just a meter, including a loudness meter and a frequency spectrum meter. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed all these videos for this Mix War #1 series. Make sure to hit the you know what button if you enjoyed the video. Otherwise, don't hit that button. But anyway, thanks for watching, and I will be doing another Mix War sometime in the future.